All right, this is exercise 102, adding lab values to the SPF or the spectra file. In the last exercise, we became familiar with the various file types that we've got within UCal4 and how to work with them and how to do some simple manipulations. Now we're going to start working and creating the building block and the files that we're going to need to create our NIR calibrations. So this exercise will show you how to add lab values to an SPF file. So the SPF file generally would have come from one of our SpectraStar XT instruments. In the UScan software, you can go into UScan from the View History tab. You can select samples, export spectra, and presto, you've got an SPF file. From that point on, all of your work is going to be in UCal4. So let's jump in. Okay, I don't know if this is the most important lecture in the course, but it is certainly a very important one. And one of the things this does is it sets up your base file that you will be using for your regressions and everything else. And one of the things that we said here is if you can't combine the spectra and the lab data into the SPF file, we can't make models. If you think about towards our third lecture where we talked about quantitative data analytics, we showed a table that had the features and the responses that we will be using to build these models. And what we're doing right now through the UCal4 software is we're actually creating that table. We're just using the UCal4 software as a very easy interface to do it. So just a caveat here or a note, sample names are the key. If you mix them up, you will have a bookkeeping mess that you will need to clean up or else your calibrations will not work very well. So the SPF comes from UScan. If you have scans in UScan, you can export them. Again, this is from the View History tab. These will come out generally without lab values. It is possible to enter lab values in UScan. If you are the calibration developer and this is your instrument, I would recommend that you do the manipulations outside of UScan. But if you've got remote locations, especially if those remote locations are close to the reference values, you can actually have your instrument operators fill in the lab values in UScan and then export to SPF. And that's fantastic because the SPF files then come to you with reference values included. They're ready to go, okay? This exercise, we're going to use lab data from a spreadsheet, and we're going to do an export out of UCal4 into Excel and then back again. For some of you, you won't have to do this. Nowadays, a lot of the commercial labs will provide you with data in an Excel format or into some sort of an electronic file format. If you can get it in that format, you can just actually take those files and copy and paste directly into UCal4. So this will be the second half of this exercise. But we wanted to show you a round trip just to be complete. Okay. Getting the lab values into a spectrum file is sometimes time consuming and it's a very manual process. We're going to make this a little bit easier just by doing a cut and paste. And one thing that's important is the sample names must match completely. A way to make sure that that happens is to start with your spectra file. So if you start with your spectra file, you can actually go in and from your spectra file and make the beginnings of a spreadsheet, okay? And you can put it into an importable form. The process is you're going to make the spreadsheet, you'll make your constituent names, you'll put in your lab values. One also really important thing is there are cases and there are certain analytical tests where 0 is a valid entry. In UCal4, lab values of 0 are ignored. They will not be used. So if you have a sample with a lab value of 0 that is a legitimate value that you want to be included in your calibration regression, please put in like 0001 or 4 or 5 zeros, depending on the scale of your constituent values. If UCAL4 sees this value, it will treat it as a real value, and that sample will be included in the regression. If UCAL4 sees this value, it will ignore that sample. It will not be included. Okay? So we're going to go through this process. So to start with, if you open up an SVF file in UCAL4, you can see that the file is back here. You can go in and this should be actually copied to clipboard, and you can go out and paste it into a spreadsheet. Once you get into the spreadsheet, you want to clean it up. So you want to remove the comment, the constituent names in the column, unless they're the same as what you're doing. And then you want to add your right constituent values into the format. So it looks like this. Get rid of the position column. You can get rid of the comment columns and work through your file. And what you want to end up with is a very simple spreadsheet that looks like this, with your samples and your constituent values that are in it. The nice thing about starting from your SVF file is that you know that your sample names are exactly correct. If you do not start in UCAL, you can start with a blank spreadsheet. It's no problem, but then you need to type in your sample names. Alternatively, if you get this spreadsheet and you're cleaning up a spreadsheet from a commercial lab or from another lab, you need to double check and make sure that these sample names are exactly the same as those in the SVF file, because we're going to be matching in our next step. Okay. So there are a number of different ways to get here, but this is the proper spreadsheet form that we are going to use to import our values back into the SVF. Column with sample name and a column per constituent with our constituent values from our reference lab. What we can do then is we can go in and we can highlight all of the rows. You can see we just grabbed the sample. We ignored this. A couple of slides back, I told you to delete this. I would recommend you delete it, but no matter what, your copy should just include the sample name column and your constituent columns. That puts it into the Windows clipboard, and then we're going to paste it in to the SVF, okay? Do not include the position numbers. That will only confuse the import, and if you happen to have position numbers that are the same as sample numbers, it can mix up your data. Do not forget to include the first row. So if you look at this, the first row contains the headers, your constituent names. You really want those to go in because we will be matching by constituent names as well. Control C puts that, it copies it into the Windows clipboard, and then we're going to paste it into UCAL4. And the pasting screen is shown here, gives you a little preview, and this is how you're going to want to do it. Make sure that you use these options, these check marks. Let's look at them. The first one is clipboard contains constituent names. We used that first row, so that contains the constituent names, and you can see that they're up here. So it's going to treat that first row as a header, not as a sample. The second is clipboard contains sample names. This will be used for matching. In fact, we do have one that is called sample. And the last one says match sample. If you do not do that, it will just follow the order of the file. If you put a check mark here, it will make sure that this sample is matched with the right sample in your SVF file, no matter the order, okay? You're gonna press OK, and presto, all of these data, all of these reference values are going to be correctly matched up with your sample in your SVF file. This will save you a lot of time and a lot of headaches. Just make sure that wherever you're originating this Excel from and wherever the sample names, make sure that they're the same as in your SVF file. Again, that's why it's kind of nice to start with your SVF file and do an export to start with. Enter in your data. It's really nice to be able to do this with a big screen and a spreadsheet, the functionality we're all used to in Excel. And then you paste it back in with those checkboxes, and the data will be matched for each sample to the correct sample with your SVF file. And that's our demonstration here. There's really not that much to show in this, but you are going to be working with these samples in exercise 102. And this is the flower with no lab values. And the Excel files that are referenced in the exercise, in the beginning of the UCAL4 course where I showed you how to download the files, I recommended that you put them on the desktop, as I've done here. But it doesn't matter. You can put them wherever, but just make sure that you've got those couple of Excel files ready for you when you do this exercise. And with that, please proceed and do the exercise 102, entering lab data into your SVF file. Thank you.